My fiancé leaving me at the altar was the best moment of my life. The wedding march started at exactly 2:47 p.m., and I knew Marcus would be arrested in approximately 8 minutes. I adjusted my veil one final time as my cousin Emma, my hastily appointed replacement maid of honor, gave my hand a squeeze. "You sure about this, Sarah?" she whispered, her eyes wide with the kind of concern reserved for people who think you completely lost your mind. I was sure. More sure than I'd been about anything in months, certainly more sure than I'd ever been about marrying Marcus Kellerman. But he didn't know that yet. None of our 200 guests knew that yet. As far as everyone was concerned, this was still the fairy tale wedding I'd been planning for 18 months, the wedding that was supposed to celebrate my marriage to the man who'd been systematically stealing from my late father's company while screwing my best friend behind my back. "Sarah Elizabeth Morrison," I whispered to myself, smoothing down the silk of my $4,000 dress, "today you become someone completely different." The massive oak doors of St. Catherine's opened, and I could see down the aisle to where Marcus stood at the altar, looking devastatingly handsome in his custom tuxedo. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his smile radiant as he watched me appear. For a split second, just one, I remembered why I'd fallen for him 3 years ago at that marketing conference in Chicago. The charm, the confidence, the way he'd made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. Of course, I now knew he'd made at least 7 other women feel exactly the same way. I started walking, my heels clicking against the marble floor in rhythm with the organ music. My mother dabbed at her eyes in the front row, probably thinking about how Dad would have loved to see this day. The irony made my stomach clench. Dad had built Morrison and Associates from nothing, turning a small consulting firm into a multi-million-dollar operation. He trusted Marcus enough to make him CFO 2 years ago, back when I'd foolishly thought my boyfriend's sudden interest in joining the family business was romantic. $340,000. That's how much Marcus had stolen over the past 14 months, funneling money through fake vendor accounts and inflated expense reports. I discovered it 3 days ago when I decided to surprise him by reviewing the quarterly reports myself, something about wanting to be more involved in Dad's legacy now that I was getting married. Instead, I'd found a legacy of lies. Marcus's best man, his brother Jake, shot me a nervous smile. Poor Jake had no idea his brother was about to become front-page news in tomorrow's Tribune. Neither did Marcus's parents, who'd flown in from Portland and spent yesterday's rehearsal dinner telling anyone who'd listen how proud they were of their son. I was 10 steps away now. Marcus reached out his hand to me, and I could see the Cartier watch on his wrist, the one he'd bought himself for our engagement, claiming it was a gift from a grateful client. Funny how grateful clients always seem to give gifts that cost exactly what he'd stolen that month. "You look incredible," he mouthed, and I smiled back like a bride should. 5 more steps. Through the stained glass windows, I caught a glimpse of 2 black SUVs parked discreetly behind the church. Agent Rodriguez had promised me they'd be invisible until the moment we'd planned, and she'd kept her word. 3 more steps. "Dearly beloved," Father McKenna began, his voice echoing through the cathedral, "we are gathered here today." I took Marcus's hands and looked into his lying, cheating, stealing eyes. 2 more minutes. The ceremony proceeded with agonizing precision. Father McKenna's voice droned through the traditional opening, something about the sanctity of marriage and the bonds that tie 2 souls together for eternity. I wondered if he'd ever officiated a wedding where the groom was about to be dragged away in federal custody. Marcus's hands were steady in mine, his thumb tracing small circles on my palm, a gesture that used to comfort me during stressful moments. Now it just reminded me of how those same hands had forged signatures on fraudulent contracts and caressed my best friend's skin in the backseat of his BMW. "If anyone here has a reason why these 2 should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace," Father McKenna announced. I almost laughed. Where should I start? The embezzlement? The affair with Jessica, who was supposed to be standing where Emma now stood? The fact that he'd used my father's money to pay for the very engagement ring currently cutting circulation to my finger? The silence stretched for the traditional pause. In the 3rd row, I spotted Mrs. Chen from the accounting department. She'd been the one to help me trace Marcus's digital footprints through the company servers, her face growing paler with each falsified document we uncovered. She knew exactly why this wedding shouldn't happen, but she also knew the plan. Marcus squeezed my hands gently, misinterpreting my tension as normal wedding nerves. His smile was so genuine, so filled with what looked like actual love, that for a moment I questioned everything. But then I remembered the text messages I'd found on his phone Tuesday night. Asterisk can't wait until she's finally your wife so we can stop sneaking around. The guilt is killing me. J asterisk. Asterisk soon, baby. After the honeymoon, I'll figure out how to tell her. The company will be mine anyway once we're married. M asterisk. That last part had been the real kicker. Marcus hadn't just been stealing money, he'd been positioning himself to take over Morrison and Associates entirely. Our prenup, which his lawyer had insisted on, would have given him controlling interest in the company if something happened to me. I thought it was romantic that he wanted to protect my assets. Turns out he'd been planning to become my biggest liability. "Now we'll have a special presentation," Father McKenna announced, deviating from the traditional script as we'd rehearsed yesterday. "Sarah has prepared a tribute to their relationship." The projection screen that had been installed for our wedding video flickered to life behind the altar. Marcus turned to look, his expression confused but still trusting. The guests murmured appreciatively, probably expecting a montage of our romantic moments set to some syrupy love song. Instead, the first image that appeared was a bank statement showing a $15,000 withdrawal to Alpine Consulting, a company that existed only in Marcus's imagination, and a P.O. box in Delaware. Marcus's face went white. "Sarah, what?" "Just watch, honey," I said sweetly, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "I made this especially for you." The next slide showed hotel receipts from the Marriott downtown. The same hotel where he told me he was meeting with potential clients on 17 different occasions over the past 6 months. The same hotel where he'd actually been meeting with Jessica every Thursday at 2 p.m., room 1247. I heard a gasp from the audience and spotted Jessica's mother, Mrs. Patterson, rising from her seat. Jessica herself was noticeably absent. She'd called in sick this morning, claiming food poisoning. More like guilt poisoning. The oak doors at the back of the church opened with a soft creak. Right on schedule. Agent Rodriguez entered first, her badge clearly visible against her dark suit. Behind her came Agent Mills and two uniformed officers, their footsteps echoing against the marble as they walked down the aisle with the measured precision of people who'd done this 100 times before. Marcus's grip on my hands tightened painfully. Sarah, stop this. Whatever you think you know. I know about the Cayman Islands account, I said quietly, just for him. His face went from white to gray. The one with $127,000 in it. The one you opened using my social security number. That little detail had been Agent Rodriguez's favorite discovery. Identity theft on top of embezzlement carried a mandatory minimum sentence, and Marcus had been sloppy enough to use the hotel's Wi-Fi for his banking transactions. The FBI had traced everything within hours once I'd given them the initial evidence. The projection screen now showed a series of text messages, blown up large enough for everyone to read. Asterisk Marcus, the wedding's in 3 days. After that, I'll have legal access to everything. We can disappear to Costa Rica like we planned. Asterisk. Asterisk Jessica, what about Sarah? She loves you, Marcus. This feels so wrong. Asterisk. Asterisk Marcus, Sarah's useful, but she's not you. Once I liquidate her father's accounts, we'll have enough to start over. She'll never find us. Asterisk. A collective gasp rose from the congregation. Someone in the back started crying, probably Marcus's Aunt Margaret, who'd always been overly emotional at family events. I spotted my mother in the front row, her face cycling through confusion, horror, and something that might have been pride. Marcus Kellerman, Agent Rodriguez announced, her voice carrying clearly through the cathedral's sound system, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. Marcus dropped my hands like they were on fire. This is insane. Sarah, tell them this is some kind of mistake. The only mistake, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, was thinking I was stupid enough not to notice. I turned to face our guests, many of whom were now standing, craning their necks to get a better view of the drama unfolding at the altar. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming today. Your presence here has been illuminating. The screen cycled to the final image, a photograph of Marcus and Jessica in bed together, taken by the private investigator I'd hired Wednesday morning. I debated including it, it felt cruel, even considering everything, but I wanted absolute clarity. No room for Marcus to spin this as a misunderstanding or a vengeful ex-girlfriend's fantasy. Jessica's father, Judge Patterson, stood up abruptly and walked out, his face thunderous. The irony wasn't lost on me, he'd probably be seeing Marcus again soon, just from the other side of the courtroom. Agent Mills stepped forward with handcuffs while Rodriguez began reading Marcus's Miranda rights. The traditional words of legal caution seemed to blend with the organ music still playing softly in the background, creating a surreal soundtrack for the destruction of everything I thought I wanted. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Marcus looked at me one final time as the cuffs clicked into place. Sarah, please. I can explain everything. The money, I was going to pay it back. And Jessica, that wasn't, we never meant for it to happen. I adjusted my veil and smiled. Marcus, darling, I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to explain everything to your cellmate. As they led him down the aisle, the same aisle I'd just walked up as his bride-to-be, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Pure, unadulterated relief. The congregation erupted into chaos, voices overlapping as people tried to process what they just witnessed. But all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat, steady and strong, as I watched my old life disappear through those oak doors. The chaos in the cathedral reached a crescendo as Marcus disappeared through the doors, but I remained frozen at the altar, suddenly aware that 200 pairs of eyes were now focused entirely on me. The organ music had stopped abruptly, poor Mrs. Henderson probably didn't have sheet music for what to play during a federal arrest. Sarah. My mother's voice cut through the murmur of confused guests. She was pushing through the crowd, her carefully applied makeup already streaking down her cheeks. Sweetheart, what just happened? Why didn't you tell me? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, asterisk you vindictive bitch. You've ruined everything. Marcus loves me, not you. We were going to tell you after the honeymoon. Asterisk. I held up the phone so Emma could read it over my shoulder. She let out a snort of disgust. Even now she's making herself the victim. Unbelievable. Sarah Morrison. The voice boomed from the back of the church, and I turned to see Marcus's father, Robert Kellerman, striding down the aisle with the fury of a man whose retirement fund had just been arrested. How dare you humiliate our family like this? Whatever lies you've concocted. Mr. Kellerman, I interrupted, my voice carrying clearly through the cathedral's acoustics, your son stole $340,000 from my family's company. The FBI has 18 months of documentation. These aren't lies, they're federal charges. His wife grabbed his arm, whispering frantically in his ear, but he shook her off. You orchestrated this circus because you found out about his affair? You could have handled this privately, like a decent person. A decent person? The laugh that escaped me echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Your son was planning to drain my father's company and disappear to Costa Rica with my maid of honor. He opened offshore accounts using my social security number. Tell me, Mr. Kellerman, what would a decent person do with that information? Mrs. Chen approached the altar, her usual reserved demeanor replaced by something approaching admiration. Sarah, I have the final audit reports in my car if the FBI needs them. The total loss is actually $347,000. We found 3 more transactions this morning. The number hit the guests like a physical blow. I heard someone whisper, 300,000, and watched the understanding ripple through the crowd. This wasn't just about a cheating fiancé anymore. This was about the systematic destruction of a dead man's legacy. My cousin Emma squeezed my arm. We should get you out of here, she murmured. Let everyone process this without you having to perform anymore. But I wasn't ready to leave. For the first time in 3 years, I felt completely, authentically myself. Actually, I have something else to say. I walked to the microphone at the altar, the one that was supposed to carry my wedding vows, and faced the congregation. My $4,000 dress rustled around me like armor. I know this isn't what anyone expected today. I know you're confused, angry, maybe even disappointed in me. But 3 days ago, I discovered that the man I was about to marry had stolen enough money from my father's company to pay for our entire wedding twice over. He used my inheritance to buy my engagement ring. He used my father's money to pay for hotel rooms where he slept with my best friend. The cathedral was dead silent now except for the sound of Mrs. Patterson crying softly in the fifth row. My father built Morrison and Associates with his bare hands. He trusted Marcus because I loved Marcus. That trust cost us both dearly. I looked directly at Robert Kellerman. So yes, I orchestrated this. Because decent people don't steal from the dead, and they don't betray the people who love them. I stepped away from the microphone and began walking down the aisle, my heels clicking against marble with a rhythm that sounded remarkably like freedom. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, "That's my daughter." I made it halfway down the aisle before Jessica appeared. She burst through the oak doors like a woman possessed, her bridesmaid dress, the lavender silk we'd chosen together at Nordstrom 8 months ago, wrinkled and stained with what looked like coffee. Her usually perfect blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her makeup had the blotchy, uneven quality that comes from crying and hastily reapplying foundation. "You absolute psychopath," she screamed, her voice echoing off the cathedral walls. "How could you do this to him?" "To us?" The remaining guests, about half had already fled in the chaos, turned as one to stare at her. I stopped walking and slowly turned around, feeling oddly calm despite the fresh wave of drama barreling toward me. "Jessica," I said evenly. "I thought you had food poisoning. Don't you dare act innocent with me, Sarah Morrison. You planned this whole thing like some vindictive soap opera villain." She was walking toward me now, her heels clicking angrily against the marble. "Marcus loves me. We were going to tell you after your honeymoon, we were trying to spare your feelings." Emma stepped protectively beside me. "Spare her feelings by stealing from her company and planning to disappear to Costa Rica?" Jessica's face flushed red. "That money was just temporary. Marcus was going to pay it back once the Peterson deal closed next quarter. And Costa Rica was just a fantasy, we never actually planned to." She stopped abruptly, realizing she'd just admitted to knowing about both the embezzlement and the escape plan. "Just temporary?" Mrs. Chen's voice cut through the tension. She was still standing near the altar, holding a manila folder thick with documents. "Ms. Patterson, I've been Morrison and Associates head accountant for 12 years. Your boyfriend systematically looted this company for over a year. The Peterson deal you mentioned? He killed it deliberately last month by sabotaging the client presentation. He wanted to bankrupt the company so he could buy it back for pennies on the dollar through his shell corporation." The cathedral went dead silent. Even I hadn't known about the Peterson deal. Jessica's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "That's not. Marcus wouldn't. The shell corporation is called Apex Holdings," Mrs. Chen continued relentlessly. "Registered in Delaware 3 weeks ago. Your name is listed as the secretary, Ms. Patterson." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Jessica, you're legally complicit in this." "I just signed papers," she said desperately, her voice rising to a near shriek. "Marcus said it was for tax purposes when we got married. I didn't know what any of it meant." Judge Patterson, who I thought had left, stepped out from behind a pillar near the altar. His face was carved from stone. "Jessica Marie Patterson, you will not say another word. Not one more word." The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. "They were going to destroy the company entirely," I said slowly, looking at Mrs. Chen. "Drive it into bankruptcy, buy it through their shell corporation, then disappear with whatever assets they could liquidate." "The Cayman account was just the beginning," Mrs. Chen confirmed. "We found evidence of 3 other offshore accounts this morning. The FBI estimate they would have cleared approximately $2.3 million if they'd succeeded." Jessica started backing toward the door, her face white with terror. "I need to call my lawyer." "Your lawyer is standing right behind you," Judge Patterson said grimly, "and he's advising you to invoke your Fifth Amendment rights immediately." My mother appeared at my elbow, her earlier tears replaced by a fury I hadn't seen since she'd discovered my teenage shoplifting phase. "Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, are you telling me that little snake was planning to steal your father's entire life's work?" "Not just steal it, Mom. Destroy it completely and rebuild it under their names." The remaining wedding guests had formed loose clusters throughout the cathedral, whispering frantically among themselves. I caught fragments of conversation, federal investigation. Poor Sarah. Always knew there was something off about Marcus. Emma tugged on my arm. "We really should go now. Before this gets any more insane." But as we started toward the side exit, my phone rang. Agent Rodriguez's name flashed on the screen. "Ms. Morrison? We have a problem. Marcus is claiming you were in on the embezzlement scheme. Says you helped him set up the accounts and are now framing him to avoid prosecution yourself." The cathedral spun slightly around me. "That's impossible. You have all the evidence." "We do. But he's also claiming the private investigator photos were fabricated, that you hired actors to pose as him and Ms. Patterson." Rodriguez's voice was professional but concerned. "His lawyer is demanding we arrest you as a co-conspirator." I looked around the cathedral at the faces staring back at me, some sympathetic, others suspicious, all of them hungry for more drama. "Agent Rodriguez," I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'll be at FBI headquarters within the hour to provide any additional evidence you need." I ended the call and faced my wedding guests one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears the show isn't over yet." The FBI field office smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucratic despair. I sat in interview room C, still wearing my wedding dress, while Agent Rodriguez reviewed a stack of documents that seemed to grow thicker every time I looked at it. "Marcus is being very creative with his story," she said, sliding a transcript across the metal table. "According to him, you masterminded the entire embezzlement scheme because you were angry about your father's will leaving you the company instead of selling it outright for cash." I scanned the pages, my disbelief growing with each accusation. "He claims I seduced him specifically to gain access to someone with financial expertise? That I manipulated him into joining Morrison and Associates so I could use him as a fall guy? Gets better. He says the affair with Jessica was your idea, that you encouraged it so you'd have grounds for divorce and could keep all the stolen money while appearing to be the victim." Emma, who'd insisted on coming with me despite my protests, let out a harsh laugh. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Sarah found out about the affair by accident 3 days ago when she walked in on them at her apartment." Agent Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Actually, that's another problem. Jessica is now claiming that incident never happened. Says she's never been to Sarah's apartment, and the building's security footage from Tuesday night shows only Sarah entering and leaving. My stomach dropped. They weren't at my apartment. I found them at Marcus's place when I went to surprise him with dinner. I used my key, the one he gave me 6 months ago. The key that Marcus says you had duplicated without his knowledge after breaking into his apartment to plant evidence. I stared at the transcript, watching my entire narrative crumble in real time. What about the text messages between them? The ones about Costa Rica and liquidating my father's accounts? Marcus claims you had access to both phones and sent those messages yourself to create evidence. Jessica's backing up his story, says she never sent any texts about feeling guilty or planning to leave the country. Emma leaned forward aggressively. What about the private investigator photos? The ones of them in bed together? Both Marcus and Jessica are claiming they've never seen each other outside of professional settings. They're saying Sarah hired actors who resembled them, or used some kind of digital manipulation. Rodriguez pulled out another folder. The problem is, the PI Sarah hired Tuesday morning? His license was suspended last year for fabricating evidence in divorce cases. The room felt like it was tilting. I found him through Google. I had no idea about his license, I was desperate and running out of time. Unfortunately, that makes it look like you specifically sought out someone willing to manufacture evidence. Rodriguez's voice was sympathetic but firm. And then there's the bigger issue. She slid a bank statement across the table, and I saw my own signature at the bottom, or what looked like my signature. This is a transfer authorization for $50,000 from Morrison and Associates to the Cayman account. It's dated 8 months ago and appears to be signed by you as the company owner. I studied the document, my hands shaking. The signature looked perfect, too perfect. I never signed this. I've never even seen this account number before this week. Marcus says you made him practice forging your signature for months, telling him it was for efficiency since you traveled so much for work. He claims he has notebooks full of practice signatures that you supervised. Emma grabbed my arm. Sarah, this is insane. They're making you look like a criminal mastermind who somehow predicted her own father's death and spent 3 years setting up an elaborate frame job. It gets worse, Rodriguez continued. Jessica's father, Judge Patterson, is claiming you've had a grudge against his daughter since college. Something about a scholarship she won that you wanted? I remembered the Morrison Academic Excellence Scholarship, the one Dad had endowed at our university, the one Jessica had received senior year instead of me. I'd been disappointed but never vindictive about it. That was 6 years ago, and I was happy for her. She had better grades than me. According to the judge, you told multiple people you felt the scholarship should have gone to you since it was your family's money. He's painting this as a years-long revenge plot against both his daughter and Marcus. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk should have taken the money and stayed quiet. Now you'll lose everything anyway. M asterisk. I showed it to Rodriguez, who photographed it immediately. Well, that's helpful. Marcus isn't supposed to have phone access yet. Someone's smuggling him messages, Emma said grimly. Which means he's got help on the outside. Rodriguez stood up, her expression grim. Ms. Morrison, I believe your version of events. But Marcus and Jessica have constructed a very convincing counter-narrative, and they clearly had time to coordinate their stories before we arrested him. We're going to need something more concrete than your word against theirs. I looked down at my wedding dress, now wrinkled and coffee-stained, and realized I was no longer just the victim of a betrayal. I was a suspect in a federal crime. Agent Rodriguez, I said slowly, I think I know where to find that concrete evidence. But we'll need to move fast before they realize what I'm about to do. The plan I was about to propose would either clear my name or destroy what little credibility I had left. But sitting in that sterile FBI interview room, watching my entire life get rewritten as an elaborate criminal conspiracy, I realized I didn't have much choice. Marcus has been living in my apartment for the past 14 months, I told Rodriguez. Half his belongings are still there, including his home office setup. If he's been forging documents and coordinating with Jessica, there might be evidence he hasn't had time to destroy. Agent Rodriguez leaned back in her chair. We'd need a warrant to search your own apartment if you're considered a suspect. What if I invited you in as my guests? I asked. It's my apartment, my name on the lease. Marcus never had any legal right to privacy there. Emma's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. And if he's been using your Wi-Fi for his banking transactions, wouldn't there be digital footprints on your router? Possibly, but Rodriguez's phone rang, cutting her off. She answered with a sharp Rodriguez, then listened for nearly a minute before her expression darkened. I understand. We'll be right there. She hung up and looked at me grimly. Change of plans. Marcus just made bail. My blood went cold. How is that possible? He was arrested 3 hours ago on federal charges. Judge Peterson, Jessica's father, recused himself, obviously. But apparently Marcus's family pulled some strings and got Judge Hammond to set bail at $2 million. The Kellermans posted it using their Portland real estate as collateral. Emma shot to her feet. They're going to run. If they coordinated their stories this well in 3 hours, they've definitely got an escape plan. It gets worse, Rodriguez continued. 20 minutes ago, someone used Marcus's key to enter your apartment building. Security footage shows a woman matching Jessica's description. The room spun around me. She's destroying evidence. Right now, while we're sitting here. We can't get a warrant fast enough, Rodriguez said, already reaching for her jacket. But if you invite us to accompany you to your own apartment. Let's go. The drive to my apartment in Agent Rodriguez's sedan felt like it took hours, though my phone showed only 18 minutes had passed. Emma sat in the back seat, furiously scrolling through news articles about the wedding disaster that were already appearing online. Channel 7 is calling it the wedding arrest heard round the world, she reported. And someone posted video footage of Marcus being led away in handcuffs. It's got 50,000 views already. My phone had been buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, distant relatives, and college friends who'd seen the story on social media. I turned off notifications after the 20th missed call, but I could see the screen lighting up every few seconds. Sarah, Rodriguez said, glancing at me in the passenger seat, when we get there, I need you to be prepared for what we might find. If they've been systematically destroying evidence, your apartment might be destroyed. I know. I stared out the window at the familiar streets of my neighborhood, wondering if I'd ever feel safe there again. At this point, I'm more worried about what they might have planted than what they've taken. We pulled into my building's parking garage at 6:43 p.m. Marcus's BMW was gone from his assigned spot, the spot I'd paid for as an addition to my lease, but there was a white Honda Civic I didn't recognize parked near the elevator. Rental car, Rodriguez observed, photographing the license plate. Smart. Harder to track. The elevator ride to the 8th floor felt endless. When we finally reached my door, I could hear voices inside, low, urgent, definitely conspiratorial. I slid my key into the lock as quietly as possible and turned it slowly. The door opened to reveal Jessica Patterson kneeling beside my home office desk, feeding documents into a portable paper shredder while Marcus stood over her, directing the operation. Make sure you get all the signature practice sheets, he was saying. And anything with the Cayman account numbers? He looked up and saw me standing in the doorway with Agent Rodriguez behind me. Shit, he said. It was the first honest thing I'd heard him say in months. The silence stretched for maybe 3 seconds before Marcus bolted. He shoved past Jessica so hard she toppled sideways into my desk chair, then sprinted toward my bedroom, probably heading for the fire escape I'd always complained was a security risk. Agent Rodriguez was after him immediately, speaking rapidly into her radio as she ran. I stood frozen in my own doorway, watching Jessica scramble to gather armfuls of shredded paper like somehow she could undestroy the evidence. The portable shredder was still humming, and I could see my father's company letterhead mixed in with what looked like pages of handwriting practice. Sarah, I can explain, Jessica started, but I held up my hand. Don't. Just don't. I walked into my living room that smelled like Marcus's cologne and Jessica's perfume, and surveyed the damage. How long have you two been using my apartment as your criminal headquarters? She sat back on her heels, still clutching shredded documents. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We were going to pay everything back, I swear. Marcus had it all figured out. Marcus had it figured out? I laughed, and it sounded slightly hysterical even to my own ears. Marcus, who just got caught red-handed destroying evidence in a federal case. That Marcus? From my bedroom came the sound of a window slamming open, followed by Agent Rodriguez shouting, "Suspect is on the fire escape heading south." More voices crackled through her radio, backup units positioning themselves around the building. Jessica's phone rang, and she glanced at it desperately. It's my dad. He's been trying to reach me since you became a federal fugitive? I walked over to my desk and looked at what remained of the documents. Most were completely shredded, but I could make out fragments, Morrison and Associates on one piece, what looked like bank routing numbers on another, and my own signature practiced over and over on a legal pad, getting more precise with each repetition. You've been forging my signature in my own apartment, I said quietly. Using my desk, my pens, probably my own company letterhead that Marcus brought home. Sarah, you have to understand, we fell in love. Really, truly fell in love. And yes, Marcus needed money to pay back some mistakes he'd made at his old job in Chicago, but... Stop. I picked up one of the signature practice sheets that had escaped the shredder. The top of the page was dated 4 months ago, and I could see the progression from clumsy forgeries to near-perfect replicas of my handwriting. You've been planning this for months. Maybe longer. Jessica's phone rang again. Through the window, I could hear shouting from the courtyard below. They'd cornered Marcus somewhere in the building complex. 18 months, she whispered, finally giving up the pretense. Marcus showed me the company financial records after your father died. All that money just sitting there, and you barely even looked at the quarterly reports. It seemed like you didn't even want it. The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. I didn't look at the reports because I trusted him. Because I was greeting my father and trying to plan a wedding, and I thought my fiancé would protect my family's company, not systematically loot it. Agent Rodriguez appeared in my bedroom doorway, slightly out of breath but looking satisfied. Got him. He made it down 2 flights before our ground team intercepted him. Tried to claim he was just getting some fresh air. She looked at Jessica, who was still kneeling among the shredded documents. Ms. Patterson, I think it's time we had another conversation downtown. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Asterisk, are you okay? The news is saying Marcus tried to escape out your window? Asterisk. I typed back. Asterisk found them destroying evidence in my apartment. It's over. Asterisk. But as I watched Agent Rodriguez handcuff Jessica in my living room while Marcus's voice echoed from the courtyard below, demanding to call his lawyer, I realized it wasn't over at all. It was just beginning. The FBI field office at 9:30 p.m. felt like a different planet than the one I'd visited 6 hours earlier. This time, I sat in interview room A, apparently an upgrade, with my hastily hired attorney, David Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew and, fortunately, a criminal defense lawyer who specialized in white-collar crime. The good news, Agent Rodriguez said, sliding a thick folder across the table, is that we recovered enough evidence from your apartment to prove Marcus and Jessica have been forging documents for months. The signature practice sheets alone are enough to clear you of conspiracy charges. David leaned forward. And the bad news? The bad news is that Marcus is claiming everything he did was under duress. Says Sarah threatened to have him killed if he didn't cooperate with her embezzlement scheme. Rodriguez's expression was carefully neutral. He's also alleging that the evidence we found tonight was planted by Sarah before she brought us to the apartment. I stared at her. He's saying I threatened to have him murdered? Who does he think I am, a mob boss? According to his new statement, you've been receiving death threats since your father died, threats related to some allegedly shady business deals Morrison and Associates was involved in. He claims you told him you had connections who could make problems disappear. David made a note on his legal pad. That's creative, I'll give him that. Sarah, have you received any death threats? Of course not. My father's company does marketing consulting for mid-sized businesses. Our biggest controversy was when we accidentally used a competitor's color scheme in a presentation for a furniture store. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. This is insane. Marcus is making me sound like Tony Soprano in a wedding dress. Rodriguez pulled out another document. There's more. Jessica is now claiming that the affair was your idea, that you specifically instructed her to seduce Marcus so you could blackmail him into helping with the embezzlement. She's saying I pimped out my best friend to my own fiancé? The absurdity was almost impressive. Why would I orchestrate my own heartbreak? According to her, you never loved Marcus at all. The engagement was purely business, a way to gain legal access to his financial expertise and create a fall guy for when the scheme was discovered. Rodriguez consulted her notes. She says you told her the marriage would only last long enough to clean out the company accounts, then you'd divorce him and keep everything. David was scribbling furiously now. These stories have more holes than Swiss cheese. The timeline alone doesn't make sense. They're claiming Sarah planned this before her father even died? Actually, yes. Marcus is now saying Sarah knew about her father's terminal diagnosis months before he passed, and that she convinced him to name her as his sole heir specifically so she could steal from the company. The room went quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights. I thought about my father's final weeks, how he'd hidden his illness from everyone until the very end, how I'd been blindsided by both his diagnosis and his death within the span of 2 weeks. Agent Rodriguez, I said slowly, my father didn't know he was dying until 3 weeks before he passed. The pancreatic cancer was caught at stage 4 during what was supposed to be a routine physical. His doctor can verify that. We'll need those medical records, David said, making another note. But Sarah's right, the timeline Marcus is describing is medically impossible. Rodriguez nodded. We're already pulling hospital records. But I have to warn you both, Marcus's family has hired Coleman, Stewart and Associates. David's pen stopped moving. The Coleman firm? They represented Senator Williams in his corruption trial. And got him acquitted on all charges, Rodriguez confirmed. They've filed motions claiming prosecutorial misconduct, demanding all evidence be thrown out, and requesting Sarah's immediate arrest as the real perpetrator. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, your father would be ashamed of what you've become. This isn't over. A friend asterisk. I showed it to Rodriguez, who photographed it immediately. That's the 4th anonymous threat you've received since this afternoon. We're tracing them, but they're coming from burner phones. Someone's trying to make Marcus's story look credible, David observed. Plant the idea that Sarah really is connected to dangerous people. Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. Agent Rodriguez, we have a situation at Morrison and Associates. Silent alarm was triggered 20 minutes ago. Building security found signs of forced entry in the executive offices. My blood went cold. They're destroying evidence at the company too. Who's they? Rodriguez asked. Marcus and Jessica are both in custody. The answer hit me like a physical blow. Marcus's brother Jake. He was the best man, and he's been awfully quiet through all of this. What if he wasn't innocent? What if the whole family was involved? Rodriguez was already standing, reaching for her jacket. Mr. Chen, I need your client to stay available. We may have more questions after we see what happened at Morrison and Associates. As we prepared to leave, my phone rang. Mrs. Chen's name appeared on the screen. Sarah, her voice was shaking. I came back to the office tonight to secure the remaining financial records. The building is surrounded by police cars. What's happening? Mrs. Chen, are you inside the building? Yes, I'm in my office on the 3rd floor. Sarah, someone's been through everything. File cabinets are overturned, computers are missing, and... Her voice dropped to a whisper. I think someone's still here. I can hear footsteps on the 2nd floor. The line went dead. Agent Rodriguez was already barking orders into her radio as we raced toward the Morrison and Associates building. Units 7 and 12, we need a perimeter around the building. Possible suspect still inside. Civilian trapped on 3rd floor. The drive took 8 minutes that felt like 8 hours. I kept calling Mrs. Chen back, but every attempt went straight to voicemail. David sat beside me in the back of Rodriguez's sedan, his usual lawyer composure cracking as he tried to reach his aunt on her cell phone. She's not answering, he said grimly. Aunt Margaret never ignores her phone. Something's wrong. We pulled up to the Morrison and Associates building to find it blazing with police lights. The 30-story glass tower that housed my father's company on floors 2 to 4 looked like a crime scene from a movie, patrol cars blocking both ends of the street, officers with flashlights moving through the lobby, and what looked like a SWAT team positioning themselves near the main entrance. Sarah Morrison? A tall detective approached our car as we got out. Detective Williams, Metro PD. We've been in contact with FBI regarding your case. Building security shows 3 individuals entered through a service door at 9:15 p.m. 2 left approximately 20 minutes ago, but thermal imaging suggests someone's still inside. Rodriguez checked her watch. It's 10:47 now. That's over an hour for whoever's still in there to destroy evidence or worse. What about Mrs. Chen? I asked desperately. She called me from the 3rd floor. We have her on building security cameras entering at 9:52 p.m. after the initial break-in. Wrong place, wrong time. Detective Williams consulted his notes. The good news is we've identified one of the suspects who left. Jake Kellerman was caught on the parking garage camera loading boxes into a white pickup truck. My heart sank. Marcus's brother really was involved. Jake had access to everything through Marcus. Company passwords, security codes, client information. Gets worse, Williams continued. The pickup truck is registered to Apex Holdings, the shell corporation you mentioned earlier. This wasn't a spontaneous break-in. They had keys, knew the alarm codes, and came prepared with a truck. David grabbed my arm. Sarah, if Jake's been helping them this whole time, he knows you figured out their plan. You could be in danger too. Rodriguez's radio crackled. Agent Rodriguez, we have movement on the 4th floor. Whoever's inside just turned on lights in what looks like the main conference room. I knew that conference room. It was where Dad used to hold board meetings, where all the original company and corporation documents were stored, where we kept the backup servers that contained 7 years of financial records. If someone was destroying evidence there, they could wipe out Morrison and Associates' entire digital history. I need to get in there, I said, starting toward the building. Absolutely not, Rodriguez and Williams said simultaneously. You don't understand, I insisted. That conference room has a separate server that backs up automatically to an off-site location. But only if someone manually triggers the final backup sequence before the system is compromised. Without that backup, we lose everything, all the evidence of what Marcus stole, all of my father's work, everything. Detective Williams looked skeptical. How do you know so much about your company's IT systems? Because my father made me learn every aspect of the business before he died. He said Morrison and Associates would be worthless if I couldn't protect it. The irony was bitter. I never thought I'd need to protect it from my own fiancé's family. Rodriguez's phone buzzed with a text. She read it, her face darkening. It's from Mrs. Chen's phone. Tell Sarah she has 1 hour to transfer $500,000 to account number 447-829cc or the old lady gets hurt. The blackmail demand hung in the air like a physical presence. Mrs. Chen, quiet, methodical Mrs. Chen who'd worked for my father for 12 years and helped me uncover Marcus's theft, was being held hostage because she'd been loyal to our family. They're not just destroying evidence, I realized. They're trying to extort money to fund their escape. Detective Williams was already coordinating with the SWAT team. We go in fast and quiet. Priority 1 is getting Mrs. Chen out safely. But as we prepared to breach the building, my phone rang with a call from Marcus himself, somehow calling from jail. Sarah, his voice was deadly calm, you have 30 minutes to wire the money, or Mrs. Chen's blood is on your hands. Choose carefully. The phone call from Marcus cut through the chaos like a blade. I could hear Detective Williams shouting orders to his team, Rodriguez coordinating with FBI backup, but all I could focus on was that voice, the same voice that used to whisper good morning, beautiful in my ear, now making terrorist demands. 30 minutes, Sarah, Marcus repeated, his tone conversational despite the circumstances. Account number 447-829cc. $500,000. Mrs. Chen gets to go home to her grandchildren, and we all get to pretend this never happened. How are you even calling me? I demanded. You're supposed to be in federal custody. Lawyer visit. Amazing what attorney-client privilege allows these days. I could hear him smiling through the phone. Though I should mention, Jake isn't working alone in there. Turns out Jessica's cousin Tommy was very interested in earning some quick cash. Former Marine, demolitions expert, not particularly stable since his discharge. My blood went cold. Detective Williams caught my eye and pointed at his radio. They'd been listening to the call. Marcus, this is insane. Even if I had that kind of liquid cash, you're just making everything worse for yourself. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who orchestrated a public humiliation that destroyed my reputation and my family's standing in the community. You're the one who turned my own wedding into a circus. And now you're the one who gets to choose whether an innocent woman dies because of your vindictive games. Rodriguez leaned close to my ear and whispered, keep him talking. We're tracing the call source. The money Marcus stole was my father's life's work, I said, loud enough for the phone to pick up clearly. He betrayed my trust, destroyed my company, and planned to disappear with my best friend. How does that make me the villain? Your best friend? Marcus laughed, and the sound was genuinely unhinged. Sarah, sweetheart, Jessica came to me. She told me how you'd been planning to fire her from the company because you were jealous of her relationship with your father. She said you'd become paranoid and controlling after he died, convinced that everyone was stealing from you. That stopped me cold. Jessica never worked for Morrison and Associates. She's a graphic designer for the Tribune. Wrong again. Your father offered her a position as creative director 6 months before he died. She turned it down because she was afraid of how you'd react to her having authority over you in your own family business. Detective Williams held up his phone, showing me a text, call source traced to Coleman Law offices downtown. He's definitely with his lawyers. I tried to process what Marcus was telling me. Dad had offered Jessica a job and never mentioned it? She turned down a position at Morrison and Associates because she thought I'd be jealous? Even if that's true, I said carefully, it doesn't justify stealing $300,000. $347,000, Marcus corrected. And it wasn't stealing, it was compensation. Do you have any idea how much money I saved your company with my financial restructuring? The tax breaks I negotiated? The vendor contracts I renegotiated at better rates? I earned every penny of that money. Rodriguez showed me her phone, SWAT ready to breach. Thermal shows 2 suspects on 4th floor, 1 civilian. Marcus, let Mrs. Chen go, I said. Whatever problems we have, she's not part of this. Mrs. Chen is exactly part of this. She's the one who helped you manufacture evidence against me. She's the one who provided falsified accounting records to make me look like a thief. Did you really think I wouldn't figure out that she's been embezzling money herself for years and using me as a cover? The accusation hit like a physical blow. That's impossible. Mrs. Chen is the most honest person I know. Check account 447-829DD, Marcus said smoothly. Opened 18 months ago under the name Margaret Chen. Current balance, $127,000. All transfers coincidentally timed with my supposed thefts. Detective Williams was already on his radio, requesting financial records for that account number. My mind raced through the implications. If Mrs. Chen really had been stealing money and framing Marcus. But that would mean everything I thought I knew about the last 3 days was wrong. 22 minutes, Sarah, Marcus said. The money, or Mrs. Chen pays for both your mistakes and her own. The line went dead, leaving me standing in the middle of a police siege, wondering if I'd just destroyed an innocent man's life to protect the real criminal. Rodriguez grabbed my shoulder. Sarah, whatever he just told you, don't believe it until we can verify. Criminals lie. It's what they do best. But as SWAT prepared to storm my father's building, I realized I wasn't sure who the criminal was anymore. The SWAT team moved toward the building entrance, and I felt my entire understanding of reality crumbling. Mrs. Chen, embezzling? The woman who'd worked late every night for 2 weeks helping me trace Marcus's financial crimes, who'd cried when my father died, who'd never taken so much as an extra sick day in 12 years. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk check your email. Asterisk. I opened my email app with shaking fingers. The message from Marcus contained a single attachment, bank statements for account 447-829DD. Margaret Chen's name was clearly visible at the top, along with a balance of $127,000 and a transaction history that made my stomach drop. Every withdrawal from Morrison and Associates that I'd attributed to Marcus was matched by a deposit into Mrs. Chen's account within 24 hours. The dates lined up perfectly. Too perfectly. Rodriguez, I called, my voice barely steady. I need you to see this. She jogged over from her position with the SWAT commander and looked at my phone screen. Her expression darkened as she scrolled through the bank statements. This could be fabricated, she said, but her tone suggested she didn't believe it. The account numbers are real, Detective Williams said, appearing beside us with his own phone. Our financial crimes unit just confirmed the account exists and the balance matches what Marcus claimed. I sank onto the hood of a patrol car, my wedding dress pooling around me like evidence of my own stupidity. What if I got everything wrong? What if Mrs. Chen really was stealing and Marcus found out? Then why not report it legally instead of creating this elaborate revenge scheme? Rodriguez asked. Before I could answer, her radio crackled to life. Agent Rodriguez, we have a development. The suspect on the 4th floor just activated the building's emergency broadcast system. He's transmitting to all floors. Through the building's external speakers, we could suddenly hear Jake Kellerman's voice echoing across the street. Sarah Morrison, this is what justice looks like. Your precious Mrs. Chen confessed everything 20 minutes ago. She's been stealing from your daddy's company since the day he hired her, using Marcus as a convenient scapegoat when you started getting suspicious. I felt Detective Williams tense beside me. He's broadcasting her confession? Jake's voice continued. Tell them, Mrs. Chen. Tell everyone how you've been funneling money into offshore accounts, how you manipulated the bookkeeping to make Marcus look guilty, how you convinced Sarah that her fiancé was betraying her. A new voice came through the speakers, Mrs. Chen's voice, but strained and frightened. I needed the money for my grandson's medical treatments. The cancer treatments weren't covered by insurance, and David's law practice was struggling. I never meant for Marcus to get blamed. My world tilted sideways. David, Mrs. Chen's nephew, my criminal defense attorney, was sitting right next to me. His face had gone white as his aunt's confession echoed through the night air. Aunt Margaret, he whispered, his professional composure completely shattered. Mrs. Chen's voice continued through the speakers. I created the fake vendor accounts, I forged Sarah's signatures, I transferred the money. When Sarah started reviewing the books after her wedding planning slowed down, I panicked. I planted evidence to make it look like Marcus was responsible. Rodriguez grabbed my arm. Sarah, if this is true, we arrested an innocent man today. But the affair with Jessica, I protested weakly. The hotel receipts, the text messages about Costa Rica. Jake's voice cut through the speakers again. What affair? What messages? Mrs. Chen, tell her about the private investigator she hired. The PI's license was suspended for manufacturing evidence, Mrs. Chen's terrified voice admitted. I recommended him to Sarah specifically because I knew he would create whatever photos and documents she needed to believe Marcus was guilty. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me. Everything, the embezzlement evidence, the affair allegations, the text messages about escaping to Costa Rica, had been manufactured by the woman I trusted to help me seek justice. And tomorrow, Marcus Kellerman would be headlines across the country as the man wrongly arrested at his own wedding by his vindictive bride. The truth hit me like a physical blow, but before I could fully process Mrs. Chen's confession echoing through the building speakers, Detective Williams's radio exploded with urgent chatter. All units, we have multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Black SUVs, government plates. I looked up to see 3 identical vehicles racing down the street, their emergency lights flashing but sirens silent. They screeched to a halt behind our perimeter, and men in dark suits emerged with a kind of purposeful urgency that made my blood run cold. FBI Internal Affairs, Rodriguez muttered, her face grim. This just became a federal incident. A tall woman in an expensive suit approached us, her badge prominently displayed. Agent Sarah Chen, FBI Internal Affairs. I need to speak with Agent Rodriguez immediately. My brain struggled to process the name. Chen? Are you related to? Margaret Chen is my mother, Agent Chen said curtly. And this entire operation may have been compromised from the beginning. Rodriguez stepped forward, her defensive posture obvious. Agent Chen, we followed proper protocol. Ms. Morrison provided evidence of embezzlement, and we investigated accordingly. Evidence manufactured by my mother, who's been under federal surveillance for suspected money laundering for the past 6 months. Agent Chen's voice was professionally cold, but I could hear the personal pain underneath. We've been building a case against a network of accountants who've been stealing from family businesses and using romantic relationships to create scapegoats. The building speakers crackled again, and Mrs. Chen's voice resumed. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Your father trusted me, and I betrayed that trust. But when the medical bills started piling up, and David's student loans were crushing us, I saw an opportunity. Marcus was convenient, handsome, charming, easy to paint as a manipulative gold digger. David sat heavily on the police car's hood beside me, his head in his hands. I knew about Mom's financial problems, but I never imagined. Jesus, Sarah, I've been representing you while my family was framing your fiancé. Agent Chen continued her briefing. The Cayman Islands account in Marcus Kellerman's name? Opened using identity documents stolen from your apartment during one of his visits. The signature practice sheets found tonight? My mother's handwriting, not Jessica Patterson's. She's been perfecting document forgery for years. Through the building speakers, Jake Kellerman's voice returned, and Jessica Patterson? She never had an affair with Marcus. Mrs. Chen hired actors to pose as them for the photographs, using the suspended PI as a middleman. Jessica didn't even know she was being framed until she saw herself on that wedding video screen. My phone started ringing, Emma's name flashing on the screen. I answered with shaking hands. Sarah, you need to see the news, she said breathlessly. Jessica's at Metro General Hospital. She tried to, she took a bottle of pills an hour ago. They're saying it's because she couldn't handle being branded as a homewrecker when she never even spoke to Marcus outside of wedding planning meetings. The speakers crackled again. Mrs. Morrison, you have 15 minutes to transfer $500,000 to account 447-829FF, or my associate Mr. Rodriguez here starts getting creative with Mrs. Chen's safety. And yes, I know you're listening, FBI. This building has enough explosives to take out 3 city blocks. Agent Chen's radio squawked to life. Ma'am, bomb squad is requesting immediate evacuation of the surrounding area. Thermal imaging shows what appears to be multiple devices throughout the building. I stared up at the Morrison and Associates building, my father's legacy, the company I thought I was protecting, and realized that in my quest for justice, I'd destroyed everything I'd actually tried to save. Agent Chen, I said quietly, I need to know the truth about one more thing. My father's death, was that natural, or did your mother? Her silence was answer enough. The silence that followed my question about Dad's death stretched for what felt like an eternity. Agent Chen's expression shifted from professional detachment to something approaching sympathy, which somehow made everything worse. Ms. Morrison, she said carefully, your father's death was natural. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, exactly as his medical records indicate. My mother may be a thief and a manipulator, but she's not a murderer. The relief I felt was immediately overshadowed by Jake's voice crackling through the building speakers again. 12 minutes, Sarah. The money transfers to account 447-829FF, where we find out how structurally sound your daddy's building really is. Detective Williams was coordinating the evacuation of surrounding buildings, his radio chatter a constant stream of clear the perimeter and bomb squad ETA 3 minutes. But I was fixated on a different detail. Agent Chen, that account number Jake just gave, 447-829FF. That's different from the account your mother was using. She checked her notes. You're right. FF versus DD Jake Kellerman is directing money to a completely different account. She was already on her phone, speaking rapidly to someone about financial records and emergency account freezes. Rodriguez grabbed my arm. Sarah, that means Jake isn't just trying to rescue his brother. He's running his own con. The pieces started clicking together with nauseating clarity. Jake was Marcus's best man. He had access to everything, our wedding plans, my apartment key when Marcus left it at his place, the company security codes that Marcus shared with him. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through photos from the past year. Look. I found what I was looking for, a picture from Marcus's birthday party 8 months ago. Jake was in the background, clearly visible talking to Mrs. Chen by the appetizer table. They knew each other, I breathed. Jake and Mrs. Chen. They'd been working together this whole time. Agent Chen studied the photo, her expression darkening. My mother's been feeding information to someone for months, someone who knew exactly which businesses to target, which families had the most to steal. We assumed it was her handler in the money laundering ring, but it was Jake Kellerman, Rodriguez finished. He was using his brother's relationship with you to get inside information, while Mrs. Chen provided the technical expertise to steal and the scapegoat to blame. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, Sarah, Jake confessed everything to me 20 minutes ago. He's been blackmailing Mrs. Chen for months, threatening to expose her theft unless she helped him steal more. I tried to stop him, but you had me arrested before I could tell you. Detective Williams jogged over, his face grim. We have a problem. Building schematics show that the 4th floor conference room sits directly above the main gas line for the entire block. If Jake really has explosives up there, he could level 6 buildings, Agent Chen finished. This isn't about money anymore. It's about eliminating witnesses. Through the speakers, Mrs. Chen's voice returned, weaker now. Sarah, Jake has been forcing me to steal for him since February. He knew about my grandson's medical bills, and he said he'd make sure David lost his law license if I didn't cooperate. Everything I did to protect my family. Jake's voice cut her off. 8 minutes, Sarah. Though I should mention, the account I want you to transfer to? It's actually registered under Emma Mitchell's name. Your cousin Emma, who's been feeding me information about your family's finances for over a year. My blood turned to ice. Emma, my replacement maid of honor, the person who'd supported me through this entire nightmare, had been working with Jake all along. Where's Emma right now? Rodriguez asked urgently. I checked my phone. Emma's last text had been an hour ago, staying at the hospital with Jessica. Keep me posted. But Jessica was at Metro General, which was 20 miles across town. She lied, I whispered. Emma's not at the hospital. She could be anywhere. Agent Chen's phone rang, and she answered with a sharp chin. After listening for 30 seconds, her face went pale. That was the bank fraud unit. Someone just initiated a wire transfer from Morrison and Associates' primary account. $700,000, authorized with your digital signature, Sarah. That's impossible. I'm standing right here. The transfer originated from inside the Morrison building. 4th floor. Jake's laughter echoed through the speakers. 6 minutes, Sarah. Though honestly, at this point I'm not sure it matters. Thanks for the digital signature samples your fiancé provided. Turns out Emma's been very helpful in perfecting our forgery techniques. I stared up at the building that held everything my father had built, everything I thought I was protecting, and realized that the betrayal went deeper than I'd ever imagined. Everyone I'd trusted had been lying to me. 6 minutes felt like 6 hours as I watched my entire life unravel in real time. Emma, my cousin, my replacement maid of honor, my supposed support system, had been orchestrating my destruction alongside Jake Kellerman. Mrs. Chen's confession through the building speakers continued, detailing months of coercion and manipulation, while bomb squad technicians raced to assess the explosive threat. But standing there in my ruined wedding dress, surrounded by FBI agents and police officers, something shifted inside me. I was done being a victim. Agent Chen, I said, my voice steady for the first time in hours. What if we give Jake exactly what he wants? Rodriguez looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Sarah, we can't negotiate with terrorists. I'm not talking about negotiating. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I'm talking about giving him enough rope to hang himself. Jake wants money transferred to Emma's account? Fine. But he doesn't know that I've had fraud alerts set up on all Morrison and Associates accounts since Tuesday when I first suspected something was wrong. Agent Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. Any transfer over $50,000 triggers an automatic hold and federal investigation. Plus, I continued, typing rapidly on my phone, Emma's been texting me from her personal cell phone all day. If she's really in that building coordinating with Jake, her phone's GPS will prove it. Detective Williams was already coordinating with the phone company. Got it. Emma Mitchell's phone has been inside the Morrison building for the past 3 hours. She's been lying about her location all day. Jake's voice crackled through the speakers again. 3 minutes, Sarah. Don't test me. I walked closer to the building and shouted up at the 4th floor windows. Jake, the money's being transferred now. Account 447-829FF, $700,000, just like you asked. Sarah, what are you doing? Rodriguez hissed. I winked at her and continued shouting, but Jake, I have one question. How long have you and Emma been planning this? Because I just realized, she's the one who suggested I hire that private investigator with the suspended license. She's the one who convinced me not to confront Marcus privately. She orchestrated this entire public humiliation because she knew it would create maximum chaos. Through the speakers, I could hear Jake and Emma arguing in urgent whispers. Finally, Emma's voice came through, tight with anger. Sarah, you always were too trusting for your own good. Your father's company was hemorrhaging money long before we got involved. We just redirected the inevitable losses. 7 years, Jake added, his voice triumphant. 7 years of planning, waiting for the right moment to take everything your precious daddy built. Agent Shin smiled grimly and held up her phone. Got them. Full confession, broadcast to half the city, recorded by federal agents. Even Coleman, Stewart and Associates can't spin that away. The building speakers went dead, followed by the sound of breaking glass from the 4th floor. But instead of an explosion, I saw Jake and Emma rappelling down the building's exterior. Apparently their explosives had been elaborate bluffs designed to keep law enforcement at a distance while they completed their theft. They made it 3 floors before FBI snipers' tranquilizer darts dropped them both into the safety nets that SWAT had quietly positioned during our conversation. As paramedics checked their unconscious forms and Agent Chen coordinated the building search that would free Mrs. Chen, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 days. Pure, unadulterated relief. My phone buzzed with a call from Marcus. Sarah? His voice was cautious but hopeful. Agent Rodriguez just told me everything. I'm so sorry you went through this alone. I looked down at my ruined wedding dress, then up at my father's building where police lights were still flashing, and started laughing. Marcus, I said, would you believe me if I told you that getting left at the altar was the best thing that ever happened to me? Because it was. Standing there at 11:47 p.m. on what should have been my wedding night, I finally understood who I really was, not a victim, not a mark, but someone strong enough to fight for the truth and smart enough to win. The betrayal had cost me everything I thought I wanted. But it had given me everything I actually needed.